Hello, everyone. We are back at it with another episode of Signals from the Deep, the official podcast of your Seattle Kraken. This is episode 29. Piper Shaw with you, as always, joined by my co-host who doesn't like that name, JT Brown.
We'll live with it.
What would you rather be called?
I don't know yet. I'm going to have to do some brainstorming and try to figure out something. It just...
Co-pilot? Co-captain?
Yeah, okay, we're working on something.
Right,
okay, I like
right.
that.
Yeah, well,
Maybe we
okay.
can get some suggestions. We'll throw it in there.
You've already heard him now, everybody. Grant, producer extraordinaire. Grant, I know you were under the weather a
Yeah,
little
that's
bit.
why I sound like a frog this week, so I might not be doing as much talking. So
Okay, well, it's great to see you.
thank you.
It's great to see you, everyone.
5 feet away, though. I just, keep my distance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not contagious. I just sound terrible.
This is a brutal time of year to get sick.
Yes.
It's like, oh man. Well, we had to start with probably the biggest news. Today, the day this episode is coming out, there's been a lot of big things to talk about, but what could be more important than to talk about JT's new tattoos, one of which took the internet by storm over the Four Nations break.
Viral sensation.
Yeah. Would you care to fess up?
Yeah. It's been a long time coming. It's a tattoo that, I've thought about for a while. Jar Jar Binks' favorite character in Star Wars, which shocks a lot of people. So I just kind of had the idea, like, I don't have a hockey tattoo. I don't have a Jar Jar tattoo, or I didn't at that moment. But why not combine these two into one? And since we were down in Fort Lauderdale, coming out of the Four Nations, I was closer to my artist in Tampa. Hadn't seen him since I left Tampa. Wanted to get some other stuff done, but I was like, do you want to come up with a cool Jar Jar hockey inspired tattoo? Or we could just do, some more cookie cutter stuff. And he hopped right onto it. Tattooed for quite a while. I think I got 3 new ones and finished off, a couple other ones that I just kind of had some extra space to go through. It was a long day, but it was quite funny to see the bar down tweet in the middle of the Four Nations game, USA and Canada. And it's something along the lines of taking you away from your Four Nations to cover this. And it was looking at my tattoo. It was just going viral everywhere. My wife put it out there. So it was definitely fun. They all hurt. Yes. I'm sure there's some questions on that, but got it on the side of my leg and there's no hiding it. How about that?
There you go.
Yeah, there is no hiding it. You also got 2 other tattoos?
Yeah, I got this little hearts with the ones filled in, kind of like old video game reference. Got a dagger and a flower as well. But yeah, then the rest was just kind of just filler stuff to finish off some work that I've already previously done and don't get that much time. The last 3 years, Tampa, we've played on the second half of the back-to-back, so didn't have time to go through there. And obviously with the break coming to a close over in Florida, I was like, well, why not just take the day and, go put myself in pain for 8.5 hours.
So
Why not?
Why not? Yes.
will you only use this particular artist?
No, I've had artists everywhere that I've lived, whether Minnesota, artists here in Seattle as well. And
Okay.
my time in Syracuse. So I've jumped around, but to be able to have him go back and finish some of the work that we didn't end up finishing before I had moved over to Anaheim and then gone through, it was kind of a fun experience.
For those who aren't aware, JT has tattooed almost every inch of his body at this point.
Yeah, I'm working on my other leg right now, and I'm running out of space.
Yeah. How many tattoos do you have?
That is a impossible question. When you get this many tattoos, you kind of just, my arm is one, my other arm is one, my back is one, leg, like that's kind of how I look at it. But I probably have
You measure
over 100 hours plus of different tattoos. So yeah, I mean, that's why the Jar Jar one is fun now. And I've kind of gotten past the point of like the super meaningful ones. And now it's like, what is fun? What do I want?
You mean hockey playing Jar Jar Binks is not meaningful to you?
It does have some, to me, like a favorite character, obviously hockey. So like you just find meaning versus like, I don't want to ever just go to the shop and just be like, hey, that one on the wall I want. But, at the same time, like I have a leg with cartoons on it with my favorite cartoons growing up, whether it's SpongeBob, you got Hey Arnold or Gerald from Hey Arnold on there and Avatar. Like so I've gone away. I've Charizard as well, like Pokemon stuff. So again, I've gone away from like, oh, then this has like 8 layers of meaning to like, what is fun? What does that represent to me? And, again, they're for myself. So. And if everybody if they can get a laugh like the Jar Jar one, then it's good.
More than a laugh.
I have one tattoo because I'm deathly afraid of needles. Like, I don't like getting blood drawn. Bees scare the hell out of me. And somebody's like, get a tattoo. It'll help you get over your fear of needles. No, it just made it worse. So I have one tattoo and I'll never get another one. So
Wow.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I
tried.
I do not have any tattoos. I'm not against them. I've never had an idea that I felt was like a good enough idea to do it. Like,
Permanently.
yeah, I don't know. I think I'm kind of a transient person in general. Like, I just feel like I'm always changing and always evolving. And so I'm just like so afraid to like commit to something that I'm like, I mean, I just don't know that I will like that forever. I like very few things for a long time, to be honest. I'm just like, I don't know. But if I ever had something that I felt strongly about, I would definitely get one. My husband likes tattoos, and he has I forget what its name is, but it's a pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride, of course, the Disneyland version, not the Magic Kingdom version. That is like he's at the helm. I think it's called the helmsman. Actually, it's like a skeleton pirate, but he's got like the whole scene of the ship like wrapped around his whole forearm. But he loves pirates in general too, and skeletons.
Fun way to express yourself.
Love it.
Okay, but I have to ask the question that I think a lot of people they're just burning to know. Why on God's green earth is Jar Jar Binks your favorite Star Wars character? There's so many great characters. Why him?
I mean, I like a lot of characters, but like, I don't know, there's something I think he's hilarious. He's just funny. He's kind of, yes, stupid in a way, but also I feel like part of me, because everybody hates him.
Yeah. You're a contrarian.
I start to like him more and more. And when I see it, it's like, I just want more. I wish that like he has his own spin. We need to have him have his own spinoff.
Wasn't he like really heavily featured in one of the animated series or something?
Clone Wars, maybe.
I think that was it. Yeah. So, because he was like I feel like there's no middle ground though. Like you either love him or you hate him. Because I did find people which I was kind of shocked online they're like, this is awesome. There are also people saying this is the worst thing I've ever seen, but I don't listen to those people. I listen to the ones that said this is an awesome tattoo.
I like that your response was, I did find some people that did say this is a great tattoo. You're like, I was able to find a couple that
I had to sift through, the different replies and go through and, look at those ones. But yeah, you just kind of ignore the other ones.
I think when I reposted it, most of the replies were positive. So
there we go.
Yeah. I think Kraken Nation supports you. I also think I know that you like things that are unique, and you are that little bit of a contrarian. So I'm not surprised. It's very true to you. And what could be a better tattoo than something that is authentically true to you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I love the whole series, but yeah, I know I've been thinking about this Jar Jar tattoo for years. So finally glad that I was able to get that.
I was going to say, I know you've been talking about it for a long time. So when I saw it, I think I just wasn't even like.
No, there was no shock to it. It was just a matter of time.
Oh, well, I guess he finally went and did it. But anyway, folks, now that we have the most important headline, Kraken hockey headline, out of the way, obviously the day that this episode is coming out is the NHL trade deadline. But because of the nature of the Kraken's schedule, we had to record this episode before it. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to fully comment in great detail about what has all gone down this week across the league or otherwise. But I would like to encourage you to please tune in 30 minutes before every Kraken game into Kraken pregame, because I promise that our broadcast crew and us, frankly, will be covering this, very much in depth, whatever there is to discuss. I also imagine that General Manager Ron Francis will be on our shows in one capacity, one way or the other throughout, the next week and all of that. So we are going to talk a little bit about the trade deadline in general later in the episode, but just kind of as a little bit of a disclaimer, because just the nature of our recording schedule and the game schedule this week and traveling this week, it was, this is just how it has to go down, but it'll be fun because then you can tune in live with us as things are unraveling too. Okay. So yeah. All right, folks. That being said, now that we have trade deadline disclaimer out of the way, the most important headline of the Jar Jar tattoo out of the way, let's go to some really big headlines from the last 2 weeks, starting with the Cap is back. Jordan Eberle has been back with the team for a handful of games now. He obviously came back for the 3 games on the Kraken's road trip since returning from break. JT, what kind of a difference has this made for the group?
I mean, just be able to have your captain back and, you know, the leadership that he can bring both on the ice, but also off the ice as well in the locker room, you know, different situations that arise. And, you know, missing those 40 games, you could definitely feel his presence. He was off to a great start to, you know, to the season. And I think the bigger part too is, you know, those players got to see the journey, right? Got to see, you know, how much work that he put in. You know, even us being around the team don't get to see all of that. The fans definitely don't get to see exactly, you know, what he was going through and, you know, the process of getting back, you know, from injury. Anytime you miss that much time, that many games, you know, it's tough, you know, from a player perspective, but also, you know, being back with your family and, you know, just trying to work your way back to being in that locker room, being back into that setting. So, you know, all the guys were very excited to have him back. You know, whether it was just, you know, the first time skating on the ice, you know, you get into a red jersey, but then eventually making your way back on into a game situation. It definitely, you can feel the vibes or the spirit of the team, you know, be lifted just by watching, you know, how hard of a process it was. And, you know, you miss that many games, but, you know, to be able to see him go out there, especially that first game and, you know, play the way he did was, it was pretty special. I mean, you don't see that very often from that much time away, and to be able to make an impact and, you know, even maybe minutes a little bit down compared to what he would have probably played, you know, at the start of the season and, you know, seasons past as well, but not really much of a gap, right? Like there was a lot of great plays that he was making, you know, opportunities in and around the net, finding it. And, you know, that's the hard part. That's the timing. That's being out there in game speed and, you know, not being able to have that. So it's kudos to him and all the hard work that he had to put in, even just to get back, you know, after the surgery, but to see him play the way he played was, it was special. And then, I mean, you even go into the last game versus, you know, as we're recording, it was Vancouver, you know, he ended up getting a point and, you know, that's gotta be another milestone, like getting himself back, getting into, you know, this swing of game feel and to be able to find, you know, obviously at a point and get yourself on the score sheet had to feel nice.
And there's so many things I want to say on this topic, just from being able to talk to Jordan, you know, what missing the last 40 games were like for him. But one thing that I just wanted to say was, after that first game in Fort Lauderdale, or Jordan's first game back in Fort Lauderdale, Coach Bausma said, he's like, I think one of the perfect kind of, and I'm summarizing, but he's like one of just like such a good example of who Jordan is as a leader and as a player is that he's like, he had a turnover over by our net and he was so mad. He got back on the bench and he was so mad at himself. He hasn't played a game. He's missed 40 games and he's in his first game back and he has got a turnover and he's so upset on the bench. And he's like, and everybody on the bench knew that Jordan was upset with himself. And he's like, and there was very much this tone, this mindset that's like, when I go out there for my next shift, I'm not doing that again. And he's like, it's that, but when you're missing that kind of thing every day. And granted, I mean, there's so many great leaders on this team. It's just everybody's a little bit different. And that accountability is so, I think, just like representative of Jordan as a player and as a leader. You know, it's like he's willing to call himself when he's not being his best. He's like, he was, you know, Coach Bauza was just like, he was visibly mad at himself and he's not playing in 40 games. Like, I just think that's a nice, like, kind of example of what we were missing too.
Well, then, you know, that's the on the ice side, but I even, you know, he said about off the ice as well. And you think about him talking to the media post the St. Louis game where you know, from the coaching staff to players on down know that was not a good game for the team and not how they want to play. But his comments afterwards about the, you know, the couple hard days of practice and how they needed to get back to their work. And, you know, for me, just going back, he's like, doesn't matter what's going on, you know, having that pride of putting on the Kraken sweater and playing for your teammates. You know, obviously there's the trade deadline that's looming. You know, all the situations, you know, it's about going out and just working hard and, you know, just having that accountability, having your captain come out and say what, you know, everybody was thinking during that game or, you know, as you were going through. And, you know, those are just the little pieces that you have, you know, here and there. Obviously, like you said, there are plenty of leaders on this team. We've heard, you know, other players speak, you know, throughout the season as well. But when he comes back and that's your captain, it has a little bit different of a feel, right?
Mm-hmm, definitely. And going back a little bit to just the injury and Jordan's journey back, we've talked about it a ton, like on the broadcast, but just in case, you know, any of you have missed some of these stories, he had a really bizarre, unprecedented injury is kind of what we've been told. And they actually, the medical staff was able to find a doctor who has found or who has worked with athletes with similar injuries who are rugby players. And so that helped inform a lot of kind of how they were approaching this, because they hadn't had a hockey player with this injury before. So obviously you want him to be back as soon as he can be, but also you obviously want to make sure that you're handling this appropriately. But Jordan was in a bed in his basement for a month. He couldn't move at all for a month. He was in a bed in his basement. And during that time, his wife was giving birth at home to their third child. And he was literally stuck in the basement while this was all happening. So that I think is, when I was asking him about coming back, he's like, it's not even just this injury that I was working through. It's like my family was growing and I couldn't help.
Yeah.
And that was, a challenge in itself. And then plus seeing, some of the struggles of the team and just being away from them in that way too. Just knowing Jordan, that's all just motivation for him. But just kind of just a whirlwind even away from just the daily grind to get back,
I would have taken on a side job, and I would have tried to become a pro video game player at that point.
Sure
After a month sitting down away from everybody, play video games 8 hours. It doesn't sound too bad. No, I'm just messing. But
the cabin fever.
I feel like that would be fine for the first week, and then all of a sudden, So I mean, definitely a tough journey, and obviously making your way back. There's a lot of layers that go through it.
Yeah, we were told that Jordan was so committed to getting back as quickly, but healthily or wisely as possible. He was working out at least like twice a day, almost every day. And even if that second workout was just a walk, he was doing it. And Coach Bylsma was like, I wish you guys, all of you, meaning like the media, everybody on the outside, could have seen firsthand how hard he worked and what he was committed to doing to be here. So anyway, just such like kudos to him, because for everybody around to be as kind of impressed and respecting, that journey that he's gone through. And so it's been, just great to have Jordan back. And he even playing in, less minutes perhaps than normally he would be used in. His impact has already been
100%.
clear. And since our last recording as well, we also have had 2 Kraken goalie debuts. Now, I don't know if we all saw it coming exactly how these were going to go down, but Ales Stezka got to make his NHL debut against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was the second night of a back-to-back. Joey got the win in Fort Lauderdale the night before, technically Sunrise the night before. What did you think of that game, kind of how it went down in the moment for Stezka?
I think it was, obviously it's going to be something for him that he's going to remember, to be obviously have that NHL debut. And obviously the play, I thought he played well. And, right away, the first shot on goal was Nikita Kucherov going in, and it was about the top of the circle. So one of the league's most elite players, going in, shooting on, he's able to make that save. And do I dare make the comparison? I mean, Kucherov scored on his very first shift, very first game, very first shot against King Henrik Lundqvist.
Wow.
One of the greatest goalies this game has seen. So, I mean, he stopped.
And you were his line mate.
Yes, I was his line mate for a very short period of time. He was elevated pretty quickly from the fourth line.
Why.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, obviously, what a situation to be, get your first game against a highly offensive, skilled team. You look at some of the guys like Braden Point. Gensel had some great opportunities, and you just watched him read the plays. He was confident there, and he had been up with the Kraken for a while, but Joey had been playing a lot of those games, was sent down during the break to go play as well. So he had been backing up for a while. So he's been around the team. And so to kind of see that and be able to be rewarded with that opportunity, against Tampa. And, he played well. He made some really big saves in that game, kept it a game that was within striking distance until, Tampa eventually, they found a couple of looks that ended up finding the back of the net. But you watch, for your first game, obviously he's a little bit older than our second situation. But, at the same time, he has that experience of playing, and to be able to go out there and, show what you have. It was fun to watch, obviously making some tough saves that he had to do. But again, it's all about the moment. It's all about, that opportunity and something that, they'll remember forever.
And I will say too, as somebody who had to obviously go into the locker room after that loss in Tampa, I think, the mood is always very disappointed and tough after a loss. But I think the guys really wanted to win for him. I mean, they always want to win, but I think they were disappointed that they couldn't get it done for him. And especially because he did make so many, great saves. And then obviously there was just a struggle to be getting inside and getting that front in that game just offensively. So, and that game I know was just frustrating for the group overall because of that, because they had a chance to win throughout it. So, it was a little bit of a bummer because I always hope when we have, a goalie debut that it goes well so that we can go talk and like celebrate that moment with them, because it's, it's harder on goalies, I think, just in general, like the mental load of a win and a loss. And we hear that all the time. Yeah. So, and Steska just has such a great personality. He is so vibrant as a person and energetic and always smiling. So we were like, good job, Alish,
And I can only
still so grateful.
Imagine though, for the goalie side, right? Because you're saying there's so much more pressure, right? Like when you think of a lot of like a pitcher in baseball, right? A lot of the wins and losses put on them, whether it's their fault or not, right? Like it goes hand in hand. And even for me, I don't remember the exact score, but I know we were losing pretty good when I scored my first goal. And it's like, yes, it's a super celebration, but then at the same time, you're like, yeah, but I think we're losing 4-1 or something. You know what I mean? Something like that. So it's like, it kind of has that little, like, you're trying to find that balance, but especially from a goaltender where you want to win every single game, you want that opportunity. And a lot of it, it comes down to you make 10 great saves in a game, but then you let in one and that's the one. So a goaltender has so much more pressure. So I can completely feel for what they're thinking. And obviously the team wanting to win that for them, especially with the goaltender situation. And obviously the players are a little bit different, for our first goal or, your first game, you want to win the game as a team, but it means a little bit more, from that goaltender perspective.
100%. And then that, I think, just takes us right into our next goaltender debut that we had on that road trip as well. Nike Koko, 20 years old. For those of you who are not familiar, he is from Finland. We got to start though. Incredible pads. Great setup on the goalie gear front. We were admiring them at morning skate ahead of St. Louis. I was like, that might be my favorite kit that any of our Kraken goalies ever have had.
Yeah, no, the tentacles. I mean, it's the color scheme. There was even just a little detail of the anchor on the, I'd say like the outer heel portion, right by where the skate is. Again,
and blue straps.
Yep.
Right.
Again,
ice blue.
Goalies get to be a little bit more creative, right? Like obviously players, it's not as creative when it comes to, obviously you can change the different graphics. Sometimes the graphics on your sticks can be a little bit different, but goalies kind of have that full reign. Obviously you look at the mask, you look at the pads as well. And I'd give it a solid 10 out of 10.
Yeah. That has nothing to do with anything else, but I was like, that is my favorite goalie gear setup that I have seen from our team.
I mean, they always talk about look good, feel good, play good. Well, you got the first part starting right away with the looking good. The pads were fantastic.
True. Okay. So, Nike Koko did make his debut in that St. Louis game. Obviously, I would have to imagine nobody went into that game thinking that was the game that he was going to make his debut, but you never know. You're backing up, your number may be called, and it was called. Tough situation for the 20-year-old goaltender to have to come into for his first game. However, really memorable, I would think. I mean, the moment's going to be memorable regardless, but like we were talking to Coach Bausma after that game, that is going to be not only a moment that he remembers as his debut, but also like lessons to kind of be learned about what that feeling is as a team and kind of a maturing, process to go in that game. Just your thoughts on how things panned out.
Yeah, obviously it was a tough game, and not from a goaltending perspective, but just as a team, weren't able to generate, and the opportunities that St. Louis ended up having, and they're finding the back of the net just too good of opportunities. You're asking your goaltender to make unbelievable saves countless times and again, and I think when Joey ends up being pulled, it's less of, hey Joey, this isn't your fault. This is, hey team, let's get it together, let's figure it out. Because the goaltending wasn't the problem in that game. There was many more, defensive lapses, as we go through. But, for him to be able to get into that game, obviously a whirlwind, I'm sure you get a tap on the pads after the goal goes in. He's like, hey, you're going to get ready to go. And, the type of emotions that would come through in that situation, like you said, you're coming up to back up, but you're probably not thinking you're going to go in.
Playing,
but to be able to go in, we saw him in the morning skate. Obviously getting to go out there with the NHL guys, getting to play. He was confident. He looked well. Even in camp, he was looking good. His numbers in the AHL were, for the rookie goaltenders, I believe he was leading the league for rookie goaltenders in wins and save percentage. So obviously he's got the skill, he's got the opportunity. So for him to get the call up was, something special as well. But obviously just playing, like it has to be awesome from that perspective. But I also think maybe you have a little less stress because you've already come in, the game was where it was.
True.
But for me, even for him, obviously comes in, I believe it was 6 shot. He only ended up having 6 in that game, but you see him in there. He's making plays. He was confident behind the net, playing the puck, in situations. Even one, he bailed himself out, had this dive all the way back to make a save where, maybe the puck handle, he didn't realize the guy was right on him. So again, you talk about lessons, you talk about learning, throughout, on the fly in an NHL game for such a young goaltender. Obviously, you want to find a few saves and start to feel and get comfortable within there. And, I thought he did a really good job, especially, you look at the age, you look at what he's been able to do in the American League, and you can see that, as it goes on, that's going to be, he's going to be a player that is up here, that is going to be with the team, and he just has to continue to keep growing. He still is young, right? Then as goaltenders, we always talk about,
they debut later.
They find their stride. They get a little bit later in their careers or age-wise before, they really settle in. So for him to be able to get that experience, be able to play a game, up here in the National Hockey League is something that, not everybody gets to do first off, but to be able to go out there and play well, obviously given the circumstances of that game. And, obviously it was more of a team game than it was the goaltending game, but obviously it's one that you just will always remember.
Well, and it gives you a taste, I would imagine too, of something more to work for, when you're as young as he is, there's development to be had in every win and in every loss. And that the way that game went, I mean, and we were talking about a post game. I mean, I think that's probably one of the toughest games that we've ever covered of this team ever. That's gotta be a top 5. I mean, just not a good showing. They know that. Obviously, the leadership group has covered this and it is in the past, but for, your young goaltender, 20 years old, to come in, that there's so much value too in what that feeling was, but also then I would think motivation in working to get back to that place. And so, all things considered, that was probably a great moment for this team's development and for him for the future. It gives you a little taste, gives you something to work for. But even though, even though it was so negative, there is value in that. There is
positives in that. And I can speak, only from my experiences and going through and after college, going to Tampa and playing for those 5 games and getting a little bit of a whoa, wait a minute. First, obviously there's the excitement, the first game ever and you're playing, and then you go through and I ended up getting to play the 5. But that next summer, I was like, man, this is different than college hockey. This is different than anything that I've had to do. So it was a mindset for me going into that following year. What do I have to work on? All right, we got to be faster. We got to get stronger. Here's situations where, in college I had more time. I don't have that much time here, playing in the National Hockey League. So it was a valuable, even though it was only, for me, it was 5 games. For Nikke, it was the one, portion of the game you can take from those experiences of just getting in there. And how do you, now that he's in Coachella Valley again, how does he take that experience and bring it to Coachella Valley? How does he take that experience and move it into his summer programming and what he wants to do and maybe fuel you and drive you to where you want to go? You've got a little bit of a taste, but now you know what? He wants to be up here full time. He wants to be a starting goaltender. And you can kind of do the steps in the progression of, your career and how you want to be, as a player.
And he's coming into that St. Louis game too. Obviously the Blues were flying. They were shooting everything. Yeah. They were feeling peak confidence. They were obviously being, playing with, they're desperate, but they were playing with a lot of confidence in that game too. So it's that's, like you said, when you first kind of came up, you're like, oh, I've got way less time and space and all of those things. It's knowing that feeling alone of what it's like to be facing a desperate team as a goalie who also is playing with a ton of confidence. And it just seems like, they had every shred of puck luck as well going their way, all of that too. It's if that's your baseline of how good you would need to be, then that is a great place to grow from.
Yeah,
too,
100%.
So anyways, still awesome moments for both of those guys. So, hopefully we will see more of them or just see their continued development really. Right. So, yeah. All right. Let's talk about the trade deadline a little bit. Like I said at the top, because of the timing of this, we can't comment exactly on this. So tune into our Kraken pregame shows and intermissions and all of that. We'll be talking about it. But I did want to talk about JT from a player perspective. What is this week or maybe week and a half, 2 weeks kind of leading up to the trade deadline like? What is the energy kind of in the locker room, and how do you think that maybe influences how people play too?
It's a stressful time. Never actually traded during these moments, but obviously been on teams where, players have been moved, players have, gone to different situations or the stress, or even just the articles, right? Whether, it's rumored that X players going to, or they're thinking about this player and that. And, sometimes it's years. It's almost every year that a player's name is on the trade block, but they don't get moved, or they do get moved. And, from a player perspective, it can be hard, right? Like you're thinking about, what team is going to be the one that trades for you or is looking for you, or you're going to have to pack up and move. What situation are you going to be in? Do you have a family? Do you have kids? So there's a lot of external stresses that come with this unknown, right? As much as you can know, unless you're the one sitting there asking, but at the same time, you always don't know where you're going, right? So there is still a unknown that it can be scary, right? It can be in a spot where you're not used to being in, especially for some of the guys, your first couple years. And a lot of times you don't even know. It could be these, say a player that they really want, but then you're a part of it. You're a packaged player. That's where I was like, I don't ever think I was going to be traded 1-for-1, throughout my career. But I was always like, maybe this is something that they're going to tack it on to the trade to make the trade even or more equal value. So you just never really know. You're constantly sitting there, you're checking X now and, all the different social platforms
Twitter.
To see. And I know it's so hard to say, but, I think the one thing though, is when you have a good group, you have a good dynamic in the locker room, you're able to try to shut that out, right? Like it's almost impossible when you're at home and you're surfing, on your phone and you're looking at what's going on or all the moves that are being made. It's hard not to try to let, you try not to let it affect you, but it can be difficult, in those stressful moments. But, when you have a good leadership group, you have, obviously players that are saying, hey, they want to be, in that with this team, they want to be where they are, not wanting to be moved. It can be difficult, but as you go through as a team, right? Like that's where the team, you can lean on each other. You go through and just remember all the things that you've done to get to this point, right? So even if you are moved, you try to just kind of push that to the back of your mind. Cause when you go out there, that's still your team. You're still wearing that sweater. You've still gone out there and blocked shots for each other. You fought for each other. And until, the unknown either happens or doesn't happen, this is still the group. This is who you're with. And I think that's usually a lot of the focus, right? And trying to remember, or, obviously you have the same goals and pushing through and just trying to kind of block out that excess noise. But, that's where you rely on teammates, your friends, your family, and to kind of push through that, right? Especially if you're a person whose name is on the block and you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. So, from a player perspective, I'm happy, obviously now moving to the media side, don't necessarily have to deal with those stresses. I actually kind of look forward to this time. You're always like, what team's going to make a move? What's going to happen? And you're kind of just trying to keep track of, all the movement around the league. But as a player, did not like this week, did not like it. You try to turn off your phone or try to stay away as much as possible, try to distract yourself, from just sitting there at home and thinking of the what ifs, that can happen. So, again, when you go into that locker room, you just try to block it out and just remember everything. Those training camps in the beginning of the season, all the drills and all the mountains you had to go through, out on the ice, and you just kind of push forward from there.
How much communication amongst guys are there in the room during this time? Like if you are a name maybe that's out there or being sifted around or you've seen online, do guys really talk about it in the room? Obviously they don't in front of media, but between in the room, is there much chatter about that?
I think that's up to each individual person. Obviously, the friend, you're going to be close. It's just much like anything else. You're going to be closer with some teammates than you are with others. You're always going to be, friends with them. But obviously there's certain ones where, hey, you've been here for the whole time together and you have a little bit different dynamic and you can kind of walk through it and talk through it. Obviously it's a difficult spot to be in. It's not one that, I would say they talk too much about, but also at the same time, you can lean on and be like, if you notice, your friend's a little bit, maybe real riled up or, not being themselves, a little more quiet, to be like, hey man, we got, you're good. You know what I mean? You kind of give it that sort of talking and, at the end of the day, you just let whatever happens. And, again, this is your group. I think that's kind of the key focus for the players. And, from a older player perspective and talking to the rest of the team, it's, we can't control what's going on outside in this room or what's going to happen, what, your GMs or what the decisions are going to be made. But what we can control right here is this is our group. This is our family. This is how we're going to continue to push until, either something does or doesn't happen.
Okay, that being said, and also I know every general manager and management team is different, but how typically, for folks who might not know, would a trade be communicated to a player? Would it typically come from the GM, your agent, and I know, like you said, you weren't in that situation, but from what you know and from your experience.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, if you're the player if you're asking for a trade or to be moved at the deadline, then you already know what the situation. Obviously, I think the bigger issue is depending on whether or not you have no move clauses. And the GMs are going to have to talk to your agents and say, are you willing to waive, or go to one of these teams and take it off your list? But a lot of times it's already happened, right? You're either informed by your agent or the GM, depending upon how the conversation, it can be either or, to go through and be like, hey, you've been moved to, X team. Or, hey, I guess the agent could call you and say the same thing. So either way, a lot of it is done without your knowledge. And then all of a sudden, hey, you're told, or, hey, guess what? We're pulling you from the game because we have a trade that's in the works, or we're looking, we want to save you. We want to do the asset protection. So like, if that situation happens, obviously, then that your name is being floated around, or there's a deal that's trying to be worked out for you. So I guess it's a good sign if you're in the games, right? Because if they pull you and say, hey, you're a player that plays every single game, and all of a sudden you're not playing, you pretty much know that you're on the move.
Anything else that you guys want to talk about as it relates to kind of the trade deadline without going into too many specifics at this moment with our team?
Well, I think without specifics, I'm just saying I'm kind of waiting with bated breath, trying to just ignore the rumors and just see where we're going to be. I know Ron is always cooking something up. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I would say is like, a lot of times like, oh, the trade deadline, there's a lot of moving parts throughout. I mean, it's hard to make trades in this league. Like, it is not as simple as, hey, this player is on a, extent or an expiring deal, we're going to move him. Well, it's like, it's just doesn't work that way, right?
Like that? Yeah, exactly. Who can afford a piece like that?
And then, or if it's, a top guy, you look at guys that, Seth Jones just ended up going to Florida, but it's like, you need to find a piece. Then they have to find something that's equal of value going back to the other team. Or do we find a third party that goes through? Like,
there's salary retention with that one too. So there's even that little wrinkle where I know you have Chicago just trying to stay at the cap floor.
Yep.
So even though they're getting rid of a guy like Seth Jones, they're like, well, we still got to have this much on the books. So
yeah, I just think I know we always talk like how exciting it is and all these moves that could happen, or they happen before and then nothing really happens on deadline day. Right. And it's like, it's just not easy, because you got to remember that each GM has a mindset of what this player is worth to them. And then they have to convince the other GM of what they want and how that's going to be an equal or lesser, the trade to go down. And everybody has to agree on that. A lot of times trades can be, a millimeter from going through. And then all of a sudden, at that point, you're like, you know what, it didn't, and it doesn't end up going through. So I just think it's nice to talk about the trade deadline and we see all the movement, but it's a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's not as easy to say, hey, we need to get younger. We need to get, another scorer. We need to get whatever piece you need for that team. It's hard at deadline because it also costs you a lot more at deadline.
Right. Yeah.
It may not necessarily be out there, or the one thing that is out there, like, well, if you really want them, you got to give this up.
You got to give me an offer I can't refuse, right? Like, it's something like that.
You have to have the asset that the other team values and that the other team needs. Like, just so many things have to go right in the equation.
Now, one thing I've always wondered is you look at like a trade like Mikko Rantanen from the Avalanche. Like, obviously that was a trade that probably happened because of contract issues. They couldn't re-sign him. Is that trade used as kind of a catalyst for, other GMs to say, oh, well, if they're moving Rantanen, like, we need to start thinking about.
Oh, I'm sure it happens. Yeah. I'm sure, you're in a spot where, you're going into the playoffs and, hey man, we might have to run into this team and they just bolstered their offensive group, or they just got another defenseman. I'm sure that conversation is had whether or not, hey, do we need to make a move? Do we need to add another piece to keep up with what's going on, around the league, or where your team's at? Maybe you sit there and you say, you know what, we like what we have. That's an opportunity as well. So again, we just came up we've talked about all the different things and how things can move, and whether or not, adding a piece, does that make you want to add something else to your team? So there's so many things that kind of go into the trade deadline or trying to make a trade that it's just not a simple process. And again, you got to give, the GMs, this is a tireless time right now as they're trying to, figure out what they're going to do with their rosters.
Definitely. All right. Well, stay tuned to the Kraken Hockey Network for more coverage of that. Just on a really quick note, JT, I just feel like because we didn't have a chance to talk about this in the last episode, obviously 2 episodes ago, we did our Kraken Land discussion. You were going to be on your way to Disneyland with your family.
Yeah.
We talked about this on the bus a little bit, but just for the folks at home, how was your trip?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, I think I had more fun than everybody else combined, but
That's what you told me.
No, it was good. And I think we went to Disneyland, and day 1 was the sun was out, which was nice. And day 2, it was I'd explain it as like a Seattle rain. So it wasn't like really raining.
Misty.
Stamp.
Lines were short.
That's
I
nice.
loved it. I'm like, man, I'm starting to get used to Seattle. This little rain didn't even affect me. I'm out here having a great time. But day 3, it did rain quite a bit at Universal. I would say that actually was rain. But again, short lines. So it made it worthwhile to go through. I mean, I even tried to find a way to spend another night there, and
Yeah.
flights and everything else just didn't change. But I was like, man, I could do one more day. I could go again. I look at the kids, and they're just exhausted from 3 straight days at the parks. And
JT's trying to pull all the levers to be able to change his family's flight. So he can have one more day in the parks.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was, I mean, as it always is, there's no real bad time for me at Disney. So I enjoyed it. And hopefully, we'll see where the break leads us next year and where the team is playing afterwards. Maybe it's Disney World next year. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But how about you? How was your break?
It was good. My best friend got married, and then they were at the Florida Panthers game. They live in Boca Raton. So, and her husband is a lifelong Florida Panthers fan. So he's been riding high for the last year, but he was riding low for almost every year of his life before that. So I try not to hold it against him. And we won that game. So all things considered, I was like, okay, well,
Did you gloat a little bit?
I mean, I just kind of feel like when you're talking about the reigning Stanley Cup champions, it feels hard to like gloat much. And also, as JT knows, I try to err on the side of positivity in general. I'm not exactly one to just I'm not a sore winner. I'm not a sore winner.
You're not an Everett Fitzhugh.
Yeah. I'm not a sore loser, nor am I a sore winner. I'm just somewhere in the middle in general. So I was just like, yeah,
I can't wait for him to listen to that.
I was happy to win, obviously, but I also am like, I don't really feel like I'm in a, we're in much of a position to be rubbing the nose of the reigning Stanley Cup champions in the dirt by any means.
I think I might have been more on the Fitzy side of things, where I would have found the silver lining. It was like, hey, if you guys are the reigning Stanley Cup champs, it's kind of crazy that we beat you, huh?
Yeah, I know. But for my friend, I'm just like, as a lifelong Minnesota sports fan, before I was here, I just don't really. JT's just like rubbing his face now. He's like, don't remind me.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like I didn't really feel like I needed to, bully the one fan of the Florida Panthers lifelong in Florida. I'm just kidding. They've got
very nice.
fans.
Very nice of you. It's very nice of you.
So anyways, my friend's wedding though was great. And she's got sisters all over the place. Like one's in Africa, one's in New York, one's in Minnesota. She lives there. And I grew up with their family. So it's just really good to see all of them in one place and stuff. And then I got to see a bunch of my friends who live in Orlando over the break. And we went to Epcot. My husband and I did. We love Epcot. We had a great day there. Went to the space bar there. Cosmic Rewind, the Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster that is there. We finally got a different song on, which was very fun. It made the ride more enjoyable. But yeah, anyway, it was a good break.
Very cool.
You were sick? No.
No, I was sick after the break. I mean, I'm so glad I wasn't sick during. No, we went to Victoria, my wife and I, for our anniversary. It was a lovely time. We actually got to watch the U.S.-Canada game from the Four Nations.
I didn't get to watch the game because it was the day of my friend's wedding. And I was just trying to watch all the highlights that I could as it was happening. But we were at the reception and I was like, who scored? Who scored? Their speeches are happening. And anyway.
Amazing game. Obviously, the first 9 seconds of that game were tremendous. And being in Canada for that, I will say, was kind of special. It was pretty cool. Because the funny thing is we did Montreal and Toronto for our honeymoon 7 years ago. And that was when U.S.-Canada women's hockey were playing their gold medal game. And so we got to watch that at the Wayne Gretzky bar in Toronto. Wow. So it's kind of weirdly become, I guess, a tradition for us to watch U.S.-Canada hockey in Canada. So it's kind of nice.
I will say, though, adding on to the Disney thing, we had a big milestone because Lillian Booker they wanted to go on all the fun rides, like my fun rides this time. So that was like, all right, this is getting good. So like Incredicoaster going upside down like that. And not, so just not stay into all the small rides that we did last year. Last year, Booker was not tall enough. He was devastated that he couldn't go on Incredicoaster. But this year, got him on it. The upside down, maybe they didn't like that. Like doing Indiana Jones as well. Like some of the more fast paced fun rides, like and doing them again, like a second time going through and doing those lines where last year I felt like we didn't get to do all the rides that I would have liked to have gone on. But this year there was no real hesitation from them. They were going. So I'm like, yes, we're at a spot now where we can go and not just have to go on the little teacup ride.
You said that Booker really liked Guardians of the Galaxy, the tower, right? Yeah.
Don't know why.
Because I feel like a lot of kids, even though they can go on that one, because almost any height can go on that one. Like you can be really small and do it, but that's definitely one of the scariest, in my opinion, scariest rides that Disney has. I mean, it's a drop tower inherently.
Yeah, we did that one twice. We did. Basically, you go through, you run them all. I mean, they still love the Radiator Springs and going and the race in the cars and doing that sort of stuff. But
I love that Lexi recreated our picture too on the Incredicoaster.
Yeah. I saw that. So that was good.
No, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun for me.
Great.
The funny thing for me is as I've gotten older, I find that I can't do roller coasters like I used to. Like I just, I know, right? No, I feel bad for myself because I used to love them. Like ones, loops and fast and all that stuff. I just can't do them like I used to anymore. I can do one maybe, and that's about it. You could
probably do Disney roller coasters though, because if you are a person who loves high intensity roller coasters, you're not finding them at Disney. Like because they make family roller coasters. On purpose. I mean, not to say that their roller coasters can't be thrilling, but it's not, if you go to Six Flags Magic Mountain, you're going to be riding fast roller coasters with huge drops. Disney, obviously, they try to focus more on like the story and the theming of it. And they're still great rides, but I'm just saying you may be surprised. You would probably be okay with the ones at Disney because they make them for kids. I mean, and
I feel at some point you guys are going to get me to a Disney park. I've never been to one, but I think you guys are going to drag me into one, sometimes.
We'll have to do some episode from Coachella Valley and just make a trip over to Anaheim from Palm Springs at someday.
I'll work it into the budget for the podcast next year.
We're going to need tickets. We're going to do a live recording from Lamplight Lounge. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll just travel. That'll be the line item.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Hey, the worst thing they can say is no.
That's true.
Yeah, great point. Yeah. Well, anyway, it was great to see you both in person again and have a nice recording here. Thank you. And yeah, with that, everybody, thank you for joining us for another edition of Signals from the Deep. We will, of course, be back in another 2 weeks. Every Friday, we have new episodes. So subscribe anywhere that you listen to podcasts and leave us a review. Please leave us a review. We see our listenership numbers going up and up and up, but not a lot of ratings, not a lot of reviews. And so I'm like, maybe that's on me for not, maybe reminding people. But if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review and give us a 5-star rating. And even feel free to send us your questions, tweet them at us, tweet them at Grant. You're usually more on top of it, but we do try to, keep them and collect them so that we can, answer them on a future episode as well. So we'd love to hear from you guys. So anyways, thanks for joining us. Any final thoughts?
It's all good. Ready for the next one.
Awesome.
See you after the trade deadline.
See you next time.
Signals from the Deep is the official podcast of your Seattle Kraken and is a proud member of the Kraken Hockey Network. Hosted by Piper Shaw and JT Brown. Music composed by Benny Drawbars. Production by Grant Beery. Have a question for the show? Send an email to signals@seattlekraken.com or call the hotline at 206-279-7810. Your message could be featured on an upcoming episode.